Welcome to this presentation on the examination answering techniques. My name's Enos Chiongwe, and I'll be looking at the paper DA9 Management Accounting. In this presentation, I'll go through the following: the management accounting progression, the learning outcomes, the knowledge levels, the topic weighting, vital examination techniques, passing exams easily, failing exams easily, exam questions, demonstrations, and the common errors that students commit. Management accounting progression. DA9 Management Accounting paper comes from the previous papers that you have done. That is DA5, which is costing, and also business economics. Upon you handling this paper, DA9, you progress to do CA 3.5, which is Advanced Management Accounting. You are required to acquire some skills necessary for you to analyze, apply management accounting techniques to support control, planning, and also decision making. A management accountant is supposed to do those three elements. I repeat, it is the control, planning, and decision making. When you go to this exam, the examiner will be expecting you to handle those three elements. That is, you have to plan, you have to control, and also you have to make decisions. The DA9 Management Accounting paper syllabus provides the following 8 learning outcomes. Number 1, explain the importance of management accounting. And this one is very important because there can never be a management accounting paper without that learning outcome. Remember, in management accounting, we are saying we have to have skills to control, to plan, and also to make decisions. So the number 1 learning outcome is you should be able to explain the importance of management accounting and be able to contrast it with the financial accounting. Number 2, the examiner expects you to apply the relevant costing principles to different scenarios. The examiner will give you different scenarios, but he expects you to apply the relevant costing principles so that you are able to make short-term decisions. Number 3, the examiner expects you to apply the cost volume profit model and critically evaluate in making decisions. Number 4, the examiner requires you to describe and evaluate different pricing strategies. Number 5, he expects you to analyze the cost, revenue, variances, and be able to recommend appropriate responses to identify the variances. Number 6, the examiner expects you to prepare budgets, those budgets that are common in practice, and you should be able to explain the behavioral aspect or implications of using those budget variances. Number 7, you are expected to apply alternative management accounting techniques such as target costing, life cycle costing, and be able to explain when each one of them is appropriate. Number 8, you are expected to evaluate an appropriate working capital strategy for a company. When you go in that exam, look out for those learning outcomes. Knowledge levels, they demonstrate the students' ability to be able to apply knowledge. Number one, we have the introductory level, which is abbreviated as ZI. It requires demonstration of the basic understanding of principles, concepts, theories, and techniques. Number two, we have the intermediate level, which is abbreviated as ZM. This requires demonstration of application of principles, concepts, theories, and techniques. And we have the advanced level, which is abbreviated as ZA. It requires demonstration of selection and integration of principles, concepts, theories, and techniques. This is what is expected of a management accounting candidate. We move on to topic weighting. Introduction to management accounting is 5% of your syllabus. Short-term decision making, it's 10%. Cost volume profit analysis is 10%. Cost and the pricing decisions is 10%. Standard costing and the variance analysis is 10%. Budgeting and budgetary control is 25%. Modern management accounting techniques is 10%. And working capital management is 10%. What does this weighting mean? It means this is the number of hours that a student should spend on that particular topic. For instance, if you are supposed to spend 100 hours, it means out of the 100 hours, 5 hours are supposed to be spent on the introduction to management accounting. 25 hours of your 100 hours represents 25%. That 25 hours is supposed to be spent on budgeting. This is what the weighting stands for. Vital examination technique ingredients. Before looking at a past examination question, it is worth considering some of the things which go hand in hand with the examination techniques and lead to exam success. These include question practice, revision, the use of the 15 minutes planning time, the timing. Most students, they complain about time management to say, I was unable to finish the exam. The problem there is on time management. So we are going to talk about time. Working in quantitative papers, what is expected of you when you are faced with a quantitative paper like management accounting? We shall also look at the discursive questions. The easy way of getting marks, understanding examination verbs. First, you have to read the requirements. How to read a scenario in an exam. Passing an exam easily and failing an exam easily. Those are the vital exam techniques that I would want us to look at in this presentation. Question practice. Make it a habit to attempt questions every after a topic. Don't wait for your tutor to give you some questions on that particular topic. Go ahead and attempt certain questions in that particular topic that you have covered. It will give you more confidence to look at the examination type of questions. Revision. Most people do not revise prior to the exams. They do not revise the whole syllabus. It is important that revision is given at least 1 month. That way, it will create confidence in you even as you go to write the exam. The use of 15 minutes reading time. This is not the time to look around in the exam room as to who else is writing the exam. It is the time when you do your planning. If you have a good plan for your exam, it is possible for you to get a maximum 20 marks within that 15 minutes. A good plan, it will give you a good product. A good product meaning that your answer script will be a good product. Use the time as allocated in the exam. You are allowed to write on that exam paper. In that 15 minutes, you can write certain answers. You can scribble certain answers onto that question paper. You are allowed, but not in the answer booklet. So take advantage of the 15 minutes. They determine whether you are going to pass or not. The importance of timing yourself in the exam. Timing is very important so that you do not run out of time. The best way you can train yourself in timing or time management is by doing a lot of question practice. Look at past examination questions and time yourself to answer that particular question in the time allocated. The more often you do that practice, the more you are going to improve on time management. Attempting fewer questions in one is one of the reasons for students not to pass this exam. So do as many questions as possible. To each question or to each mark allocated, allocate 1.8 minutes. You have 100 marks available to yourself. And your paper is 3 hours, translated into 180 minutes. So for you to get 1 mark, you need about 1.8 minutes maximum to achieve that 1 mark. So when you go to question number 1, which is 25 marks, allocate the appropriate time to the 25 marks. Multiply by 1.8 minutes. That way, you should be able to finish your paper on time. Computational examination approach. Start by stating the method for each computational question. If there is a formula for you to put down that formula. Show clearly the workings. There are at times when the markers, they would rather go by your workings in allocating your marks. So clearly show your workings. Underline the final figures, the final answers, underline them. Your markers should not start looking for answers in your paper, in your script. Use the final figure to interpret what you have calculated. What does the final figure mean? Tell the examiner. For instance, in cash budgeting or relevant costing questions, you are going to state whether that figure is relevant or not relevant at all. Discursive questions. Don't waste the time to restate the question at the beginning of your essay. Go straight into answering the question. Use subheadings. If you can't use subheadings, you can number your sentences, your points, number them. It helps the marker to allocate the marks appropriate. And even on your side, it helps you not to repeat the same points. So if you can number them or if you can put subheadings, that's better. Gaining easy marks in your exam. Write answers that contain relevant material. If you are unable to understand the question, you are allowed to state an assumption. State the assumptions. Number 3, be consistent with your findings. E.g., if the following part of the question needs you to answer the previous part of the question, we should see that you are consistent in your answering. For instance, part A, it is giving me a negative answer, and that negative answer, when it comes to decision making, it simply means I should not go ahead with the investing. You are not supposed to tell me in the next stage that we should go ahead. So there should be that consistency in your answering. Use the given figures that require no computation. Those are easy marks. For instance, if you are to come up with a cash budget, your examiner will always give you the opening cash balance. Insert that cash balance in your cash budget. That is a free mark. Always identify free marks in a given question. Understand exam verbs in the requirements. The questions in a DA9 exam will mainly be applied and analyzed using the Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. And the following are the verbs that we are going to use. Explain simply means make clear meaning or purpose of. Evaluate means appraise or assess the value of. To describe simply means give a detailed account or key features or characteristics, qualities of the subject matter. Contrast simply means make comparisons. You compare the items given in that particular question. Calculate means ascertain mathematically. It's the same as the computation. To analyze means break into separate parts and examine or interpret each part. To tabulate simply means arrange in a table. To recommend means propose a course of action. To apply means put into action what you have arrived at. Reading requirements. Advantages of reading requirements first before reading the question or scenario are: 1. It reduces only time wasting. It reduces the risk of answering a question you want to answer and not the examiner's question. It also helps you in your answer, for your answer to remain relevant. Yes, in the first 15 minutes of reading time, you would have read the question. You have read the requirements. But again, when you go to the actual period of you writing the exam, it will be important that you read the question carefully. Questions in DA9 require the display of knowledge, application, and analysis. As you are reading, analyze the scenario that you have been given. Try to apply it on the requirements in that particular question. Not attempting sufficient questions in an exam would lead you to failing DA9, including irrelevant material that is brain dumping. It will lead you to easily fail the exam. Not making use of the information or the material in the scenario, it will also have a negative effect on your passing of this paper. Not answering the question, e.g. providing bullet points where a discussion is required. Poor handwriting, poor presentation of your work would also lead to failing the exam. We now go into looking at a past examination question, December 2019, question number 1. It demonstrates on the learning outcome number 6. If you don't have this paper, this question paper, I would encourage you to download it now from the ZIKA website so that you can follow through as we discuss this question. December 2019, question number 1, the overview performance. 99% of the candidates attempted this question because it is a compulsory question and it is out of 25 marks. Out of the 25 marks, the highest mark recorded on this question was 21. A pass rate in this question was only 15%. This was far below the average pass mark. This was, of course, disappointing because this question is based on a major component of management accounting and a common feature at this level. Candidates should get used to applying the concepts and appreciate the learning outcomes. Requirements of question number 1, December 2019. Part A, prepare the following for the first 3 months of next year. Number 1, production budget in liters. Number 2, materials purchases budget in liters and value for each material. Number 3, labor cost budget. Number 4, variable production overhead cost budget.
Take your career prospects to the next level with ZIKA.
Our diploma in accountancy is an essential qualification if you're planning on entering the accounting profession.
The ZIKA tax program at both certificate and diploma level equips you with an enhanced understanding of the field of taxation.
Our diploma in public sector financial management is ideal for accountants or trainee accountants working in the public sector.
And CA Zambia, a respected designation designed to ensure that graduates are highly trained to hold senior positions in the workplace.
You can study through flexible options like self-study as well as part-time or full-time through our accredited tuition providers.
ZIKA sponsors the top CA Zambia graduate to the One Young World Summit for Young Leaders and also offers scholarships to the top university accountancy graduates from recognized universities.
Visit zika.co.zm now for more information or find us on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Don't delay, your future awaits.
B. Prepare a budgeted income statement based on the results you have obtained in 1 to 4 above. C. Explain the term flexible budget. D. Discuss the consequences of budget bias, budgetary slack for cost control. Those were the requirements in question number 1 of December 2019 exams. The first thing you do in that exam, like we have said earlier on, read through the requirements in detail. Read through the requirements in detail. Number 2, identify the exam verb. In part A of your question, the examiner is asking you to prepare or to produce budgets. So the doing verb there was prepare. In part B, he also wanted you to prepare. In part C, he wanted you to explain. And in part D, he wanted you to discuss. So take note or identify the exam verb, because these will determine as to whether you are going to answer the question or not. There are certain cases where a candidate is asked to discuss, they end up listing. Take care of the exam verbs. After reading the requirement, go into the scenario. Go and read the scenario. Our question is question number 1, December 2019. Part A required us to prepare budgets. And all those budgets from our syllabus are functional budgets. Therefore, to start my answering, I have to identify the principal budget factor. This is my starting point. Make notes on the side margins. When you have identified this principal budget factor, take note of it. Why should I identify a principal budget factor? It's because the requirements in part A require you to prepare functional budgets, which are dependent on the principal budget factor. In part B, budgeted income statement gives you a clue that you use part of the information in A. to arrive at the profit and the loss figure. In the income statement, you have to arrive at either a profit figure or a loss figure. And how do you arrive at that figure? You get your revenue, you less your costs, then you have either profit or loss. In part C, you make clear meaning and the purpose of a flexible budget. Remember, the verb used there is explain. So tell the examiner the meaning or purpose of a flexible budget. In part D, give the pros and cons of a budget slack or a budget biasness. The total time allocation to question number 1, it was 45 minutes. Remember, it is 25 marks multiplied by 1.8 minutes. It gives you 45 minutes. To each one of those parts in the requirement, allocate appropriate time. Part A1 requires you to prepare a production budget in liters. Allocate approximately 5 minutes to answer. Production budget equals to your budgeted sales units less your finished goods inventory plus your closing finished goods inventory. Containers. And the closing inventory was 25,000 containers. So your 210,000 less the opening inventory, which was new, plus the closing inventory, which was 25,000, it gives you 235,000 containers. The question asked you to produce a production budget in liters. Therefore, you were required to convert the containers into liters. The 235 containers to be converted into liters. The container, each container was 500 mils. For you to make 1 liter, you required 2 of those containers. Your 235,000 containers divide by 2 will give you 117,500 liters. This is what your examiner wanted from you. However, I have just given an example on January. However, I've just given an example on January. For February and March, you were supposed to do the same. The closing finished goods inventory for January, they become the opening inventory in February. The closing inventory in February becomes the opening inventory in March. Part A2 requires you to prepare a materials purchase budget for each type of material, both in liters and also in value. Allocate approximately 13 minutes to answer this part. Materials purchases budget equals to budgeted material usage less opening raw materials inventory plus the closing raw materials inventory multiplied by the purchase price. take note that each container in the given scenario was 500 mils, and it contained 450 mils of citric acid and 50 mils of hydrogen peroxide. So we have those two materials in each container. For each of the ingredients, the opening inventories and the closing inventories are the same. Hence, the above calculations may be computed by excluding these or just using production quantities. The required materials in liters should be stated, and this can be converted into the 90% or 450 mils of your citric acid plus your closing inventory less your opening inventory. It will give you the purchases required in liters. Thereafter, you are going to multiply by the purchase price, which is 2 kwacha per liter. It will give you the value of the purchases for that particular month of January. Part A3 requires you to prepare a labor cost budget in hours and the cost. Allocate approximately 4 minutes to answer. Your labor cost budget equals to production multiplied by hours per unit multiplied by hourly rate. Production in 500 mils containers was 235,000. We convert those containers into hours. So we multiply by the hours per container to give us the total labor hours of 11,750. We multiply that by the hourly rate of 80 kwacha to arrive at the production labor cost of 940,000. The fourth part of A requires you to prepare a variable production overhead cost budget. Allocate 4 minutes to answer the question. Variable production overhead cost budget equals to budgeted production multiplied by variable overhead rate. Production in 500 mils containers was 235,000. Multiplied by the cost to produce each one of those containers. It is 1.1, and it will give you the total variable overhead cost of 258,500 kwacha. Part B required candidates to prepare a budgeted income statement. You should have learned from other courses that from the income statement you determine profit. The examiner gave you a lead on the information to use. The examiner mentioned to say use the information given in Part A. You needed to show workings to earn maximum marks. Hence, the cost of sales required calculation. Sales value is a summation of all sales values for a given period. Cost of sales is calculated as the opening inventory plus production less closing inventory. Therefore, our profit was equal to sales less cost of sales. Our sales were 9,345,000 less the cost of sales of 4,672,500 kwacha to give us a profit of 4,672,500 kwacha. Part C required an explanation on the term flexible budget. Allocate approximately 4 minutes to this question. The verb explain requires that you answer the what and why questions in order to get the full marks. The what question addresses the definition of the term. E.g., a flexible budget is a budget prepared at different levels of activity. The why question wanted you to state the purpose of flexible budget. This is to enable meaningful comparison by comparing like with like in a performance report. That's what was expected of the candidates in December 2019 exam. Part D. This part required candidates to discuss the consequences of budget bias or budgetary slack for cost control. The marks allocation was 5, meaning that a maximum of 9 minutes was required. Candidates needed to elaborate what budget bias is about and then link it to cost control. Remember, management accounting is about the control, planning, and decision making. A discussion for or against on the impact or consequences of budget bias in relation to cost control. The pros of budget biasness. The managers might build slack into a budget that they control. This means that they will make it more easily achievable by overstating costs or understating revenues. This will make it easier for them to achieve the budget targets or associated rewards. Against, it will make the evaluation of budget performance less useful for senior managers. Reason being that these managers can easily achieve the budget targets. Budget cuts, because there were two, we are looking at two parts of the question, budget biasness and budget cuts, all right? So in the future, budgets may be cut, thus making the budget difficult to achieve. A budget holder may incur unnecessary expenditure known as spending to the hilt at the end of the budget period to protect the bias. The answer to part D. Number 1, we look at evaluation. Evaluation, we are going to look at both the pro and the con of evaluation. The pro is that the managers might build slugs into a budget that they control. This is because they want to easily achieve the targets given to them. The con is that the senior managers may not find the evaluation to be useful. Number two, we look at the budgetary cuts. The examiners comment on the performance of the students on this question was that this question was a compulsory question. 99% of candidates answered this question. This area is a major component of the exam. However, a lot of students showed that they lacked knowledge in the area of budgeting. Candidates are expected to prepare functional budgets. Surprisingly, almost half of the scripts showed poor marks, poor to average scores. Therefore, for the future candidates, we expect you to prepare more on budgeting. Common errors candidates committed. Number one, adding, opening, and subtracting closing inventories. Please take note, we subtract the opening inventory and we add the closing inventory. Number two, preparing materials, usage, and purchases budgets before changing production budget into liters. The question required you to prepare a production budget in liters and not in containers. Many students use the containers and not the liters. Number three, inability to establish each material usage per 500 meals container produced. Remember, there were two material items in each container. There was the citric acid, which was 90%, and the hydrogen peroxide, which was the 10%. In part B, which required the students to come up with a budgeted income statement, it was based on the results of part A. But generally, this was well answered because students were able to come up with the profit. Whether it was not the appropriate profit, as long as they used the figures in part A, they were given credit. Part C and D required the explanation and the discussion of flexible budget and the consequences of budgetary slack for cost control, respectively. Part C and D required the explanation and the discussion of the flexible budget and the consequences of budgetary slacks for cost control, respectively. The majority of the candidates lacked knowledge of either and failed to tackle the key verbs in both requirements. Conclusion. To pass the demanding ZIKA exams, you need to be hardworking, prepare a start timetable, a revision plan, and regularly practice exam-style exams. Don't forget the exam techniques we went through, such as gaining easy marks. Good luck in your forthcoming exams. Thank you.